Welcome back to Interview At, where we teach you how to use the Amazon leadership principles to land your dream job. My name is Brandon Watson. I'm an ex-senior executive from Amazon, Microsoft, Oracle, a bunch of startups you've probably never heard of. I've even worked on Wall Street. In short, I've worked at a bunch of places, done quite a few things, but most importantly, I've built lots of teams up and down the growth curve, many different sizes. And in fact, I spend a lot of my time helping the companies I advise build their teams and run their processes better to acquire better talent. This week's interview is an interesting one. We spend a lot of time here trying to help people understand what it takes to get to that FANG-M level, right? A lot of people have aspirations to work at a Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google, Microsoft, etc. And when they come in, they're not really sure what it takes to get there. And in this case, the hard part was, I'm not even sure what the role is. The job description that I was provided, it's called a general manager. I would say it's more along the lines of business development, maybe even operations manager. It's not a traditional program manager. It's definitely not a traditional product manager. So we're just going to go with kind of a general manager type role. That's who is stepping into this. The leadership principle that we focused on in this interview, at this segment of the interview, was customer obsession. Specifically, the question was, tell me about a time where you were able to see around a corner and deliver something that a customer did not know they needed or wanted. Let's see how this candidate handled the question, and we'll obviously jump in with the commentary as we go. Try a different question path, because I'm very curious. You've talked about already kind of how you've played, as far as your skill stack goes, a jack of all trades and a master of a few of them, a master of some. And oftentimes when you get individuals who are kind of multidisciplinary leaders, they have certainly more opportunities to peek around the corner, right? Understand what customers might need both internally and externally, and either meet a customer need that they didn't know they had, or delight a customer because you over delivered something that they either asked for or again didn't know they had. So can you give me a sense of a time where you were able to kind of take that peek around the corner and do something that was not necessarily already in the plan, but definitely over delivered in terms of customer expectations, or delighting them with something they didn't know they wanted?
Would you be interested in an example from sort of my marketing world, from what we were just talking about, or I have an example from my
share.
Okay. Actually, one of my favorite examples on kind of anticipating an unmet customer need, I'm going to go back a little earlier in my career because it's one of my favorite internet scale experiences, right? So I'm at Yahoo. I'm leading at the time a product and experience design team. And part of the charter that the then leadership has given us is, of course, focus on I'm talking about the ad products at Yahoo, display ads and search ads and such. Part of our charter is to, of course, keep innovating on what's next. And this is the time when the iPad ecosystem is really just starting to take off. So I've gone back a little bit in time, but it's one of my favorite examples because it resulted in a lot of patents and a lot of customer happiness in the end.
Sure.
So I had a team of about 8 individuals, and we were all really excited that the iPad is out now, and we knew that over the next 10 years, the iPad would change the way advertisers engaged with us in ad formats, and advertising basically would become less annoying. That was the bet. So I had this team which was delivering really well, Brandon, on everything, right? All our metrics were being met really. My boss was happy, but this was a team that was not never satisfied with what they were asked to do. So on the one hand, they were chomping at the bit to do some experiments with the the iPad and the iPhone ecosystem, and they wanted to do a Google 20% time, if you will. On the other side, my engineering and product leaders, who were in touch with the biggest advertiser customers of Yahoo, were talking to me about how there were some serious concerns about whether these new formats would be more intrusive, and in fact they would have a more negative impact on the end user's experience with these ads. So as I parsed what I was learning from the business, and remember, I'm still a product guy, I haven't become a marketing guy yet, and I'm talking to my team, I realized that there's an opportunity here for us to create some next generation experiences that would show these customers and these advertisers, especially the art of the possible, help us almost think 2 to 3 years ahead of the competition at the time, and give my team a sandbox to tap into all this amazing latent energy that they have that they don't, frankly, want to apply to the traditional parts of the business. So within a month, here's what we did. We met every Saturday morning for about 6 hours as a team. And we would essentially go through, think of the biggest sort of prototyping approach you can take to coming up with dozens and dozens of next generation concepts or prototypes for ad experiences. And then on Monday, I would start going and pitching these to my account managers and my engineering leaders and say, I know we have some really friendly advertiser customers. I would love to show them the art of the possible on what we as Yahoo could do for them with next generation iPad experiences. About 4 weeks and about 20 interviews later, and about, let's just say, 10 prototypes later, we had a series set of advertisers who were really interested in being pilot customers for these next gen ad experiences. And the team got now really excited because they had validation that these ideas are ideas that they should keep working on, even if no one sort of asked them to. Fast forward about a year later, we generated 4 patents out of this for Yahoo within the team. And many of these ideas that were incubated with this initial set of advertisers ended up making their way into the next gen ad formats as part of our main traditional roadmap. The reason I'm proud of this experience, even like 10 years later, even though it's a very specific product experience, is because if we had started only with the build side or the ask side, I don't think we would have gotten the right results. I think it was a combination of like just hearing what we were hearing about something very commonplace. Ads suck. Nobody likes ads. And challenging that, but challenging that in a way that, we were sort of building testing sort of back and forth over multiple rounds. And actually without anyone asking us to at the time.
So this is a really good answer in the context of good format, well thought through, lots of meat to it. But when you think about a great answer, especially for someone at this level, right, who's kind of in that kind of late middle management career, part of his career, mid to late middle management, what wasn't clear and what didn't come through, and this is something I really hammer on all the time, which is, can you answer? Do you have the ability to answer? Will you please present an answer that indicates that you knew or had a framework in place that was going to help you know if you were going to be successful ahead of time? So in this answer, the candidate made reference to the ads were more obtrusive and that the customers were potentially opposed to them. But the candidate has worked in the ad industry, and it might be second nature to him. But this is another point I always hammer on: is never assume a base level of knowledge from the person you're interviewing with, especially if the job role is completely not from the experience that you're pulling from, because a bunch of logical questions are, well, what does that mean? More obtrusive? Is it reduce clicks? Is it reduce customer sat? Is it increased ad spend with less results? Like, be more clear with what that means and help bring me along as the interviewer so that I understand your thought process, how you got through it. Because ultimately, it's going to help me as the interviewer have guideposts to really think through how I want to follow up and ask more questions and assess whether or not you as the candidate know what you're doing and are able to guide a team. But it sets the table for the follow-on questions that come.
What was it about, I guess, the customer? And I'm not clear yet based on your description, and so please provide the clarity. If when I say customer, what I mean is, based on what you've said, your ad managers, the people that are going out and selling the ads, or specifically the large advertisers. I don't know who you were talking to. I assume you weren't talking directly to the advertisers, but rather to the sales execs who were meeting with those folks. Is that a correct assumption or no?
So again, this is just hammering home the point, right? Don't assume that the person who's interviewing you fully understands everything you're saying, right? It's okay to speak to them as if they're a 6-year-old and over-explain, because what you don't want to do is leave them wondering with questions like this, because a good interviewer will ask the follow-up and kind of get the clarity, but a bad interviewer, a lazy interviewer won't, and then they'll just kind of move on. And their notes aren't great for you, and then you don't shine as you should.
So that's partially correct. The account managers that were within Yahoo that were managing the relationships with large advertisers were definitely part of our pool of interviews, but they had enough end users in these large advertisers who were existing users of the Apex and Panama platforms, which were Yahoo's 2 big platforms at the time, that we were able to get them also into sort of these 45-minute combination of exploratory interviews plus some show and tell.
Great. So I want to then focus, since you had direct access to the customer, right, the advertisers, I want to focus this question on them and not the account managers, because account managers can be territorial. I don't want you to talk to my customers. What, don't change anything. I'm making money, right? They have a different set of priorities. So what was it about the large advertisers with whom you were working that made it clear to you they wouldn't have gotten there on their own, right? They were very resistant. They were concerned. They voiced their concerns, right? So what was it about them that made it clear to you that you're doing this was necessary rather than they're going to get there on their own in a year?
I think part of my observation after this didn't happen till the first 5 interviews, right? But after the first 5 interviews, I realized that ultimately many of these advertisers were heavily relying on us to show them something that they hadn't seen in terms of formats and experiences. So for example, they were used to homepage takeovers. They were used to all the different sizes and combinations of ads that they could do through our display advertising platform. They were even actually quite sophisticated with, at the time we had just acquired Right Media, with knowing that their ads could be served at runtime in an algorithmic fashion that they trusted. The challenge that they were facing was that ultimately, if you looked at the numbers on the impressions these ads were serving or the amount of engagement these ads were driving, through the first, to the next 5 interviews, it became clear to me that they were like, ultimately we want more innovation, and so none of them, by the way, said iPad. None of them said, touch experiences. None of that language came up because they thought that this interview was more about how to drive more efficiency with the existing kind of ad units. So of course they gave me some interesting ideas like, hey, if these units were, more dynamic, or if these units were more interactive, that'd be helpful. But by the time I got to my 6th, 7th interview, it became clear to me that if I needed to show them something. And so the next set of interviews, what we did is we actually got these iPad. So we had, by the way, prototyped experiences on the iPad. And I'm talking about, like imagine experiences where you have something on the screen that you're actually touching. And when you're touching, now you're getting a 3-dimensional experience with sound and things of that sort. It was only when I started showing them these experiences, and then their feedback was, oh, wait, we're running a campaign right now where something like this could be very helpful. When are you guys planning to launch this? Is this on your roadmap? And these questions started coming that I said, we're hunting onto something very interesting here. And what I realized was that for them, the key question was interactive engagement. They wanted new ways to experience, for their end users to experience the brand through interactive engagement. So for example, a consumer goods brand that's trying to sell a new soup and things of that sort. And so that's when I took another step back, and I immediately brought the product team in, which was, our main product team. And I said, guys, I want to show you like what we have discovered so far from these first 10 interviews, because I also knew if I went so far with them that they now started thinking that this was real product, I would create a whole different sort of can of worms.
And so what was the ultimate?
So before I go and allow myself to ask the follow-on question, it's kind of important here. The candidate started with good structure, but I think by now, if you've kind of made it this far in the video, you can kind of get a sense that they're just talking. There's a lot of talking, and the structure kind of fell apart, and it became sort of a meandering answer, which that can get you into a lot of trouble in an interview. It's very easy to start talking, especially about things you know very well. And if you haven't put your work into the stories, right, and kind of structure them in a way that you're answering questions, mental questions in your head, what was the situation, task, what was the action, what was the result, that kind of thing, it's very easy for the answer to very quickly get away from you and turn into a 5, 6, 7 minute non-answer.
Impact of this solution? Like, can you give me a sense of scope, scale, impact, something?
The ultimate impact of the solution was that we were able to, these new next-gen ad formats, we were able to bring it into the core product roadmap. We rolled it out in the next release of Apex, which was about a year down. The team started working on a series of patents, out of which 4 got filed eventually. And, I would say that, in terms of the most direct impact I can talk about is the impact on advertiser NPS. So over the after these releases happened, I kept track for the next 2 quarters, which was kind of around the time I was with Yahoo, with the teams on like how our advertiser NPS was trending, and advertiser NPS after these introductions actually went up.
Important here, if you're using 3-letter acronyms, TLAs, as it's called, in your answers, just make sure that you spell it out the first time. You never know when a person doesn't know what it is, and you don't want them feeling stupid and having to ask.
Can you give me a sense of scale of the increase? 1%, 500%?
I mean, I would say like 3 points, so it was probably in the 40s, probably went to like 43, 44. I'm talking about numbers from like 10 years ago now, Brandon. And
that's
fine. That's why I hesitate to share revenue numbers, because I think those are probably less relevant.
It's fine. Not a problem. I get it.
Okay. So there's a bit to unpack here, especially there at the end. The lack of data detail, especially for someone who's running a program such as this, is a little bit disconcerting. Oftentimes you can get away with saying in an interview, well, I can't really discuss the numbers, those are proprietary. Yes, you can do that to a point. But just even the way he answered, I would say it didn't inspire confidence that he actually knew the numbers and that he was pulling them from his memory banks that were in near storage. And so it's very easy when, especially if I'm the interviewer talking to this candidate, thinking, gosh, is this person, do they really know the numbers? Are they pulling a number out of thin air? How do I even have context for this, right? So an easy fix for this. We were 20% above our goal. See, because that actually does multiple things, but here's why this works so well. One, you don't have to reveal numbers, right, that were potentially proprietary, although one could make a thin argument that saying even that you were ahead of goal is proprietary, but it's not, especially not in an interview, especially at a company like Yahoo, which has enormous revenue line item and you're some small number of it. But be that as it may, 20% above target. It means you overexceeded a preset target. That's huge, right? Because you're basically saying, without saying it, is we made a best guess as to how we thought we would perform, which means we have a framework for our success, planning for success. We measured as we went, and we over-delivered. And just by, instead of focusing on the actual number outcome, we made $10 million extra dollars or whatever, or we hit a target of $10 million, saying we overperformed by 20% or we exceeded by 20%, it basically demonstrates a level of competency around kind of repeatable work without having to explicitly lay it out. Okay, so now we're going to jump into the assessment that would have been read into the room for this candidate, specific for customer obsession. Candidate fell short on L7 expectation for this answer block. Now, L7 is a Amazon-specific designation. If you're at Microsoft, it's more of like a 64, 5, L66, at least when I was there. And this is, kind of your typical mid-market, startup-y type companies. You're going to call this a director, right? Maybe a senior director, depending on the company. Definitely not a vice president unless it's like a startup, and even then it's probably not. So candidate fell short of L7 expectation for this answer block. Specific issues had more to do with content provided. The product certainly had the potential to be a large surface area opportunity. iPad ad units, iPad ads were all the rage for a very short period of time, especially the iAd platform. But the candidate did not deliver sufficient content to outline what was at risk with the advertiser clients, how much the business was improved in the near term nor the long term, and therefore did not provide enough scope or scale for the responsibility of the candidate. The process represented was good and definitely exhibited customer obsession. The scale and scope is what did not meet expectations. So again, that is a common piece of feedback that I give to candidates when they come through at interview it is to let them know, look, at the end of the day, you have to understand what level role you're applying for, and with that role, what the scope and scale expectations are. And if you don't meet them with the stories that you're sharing, it's going to be really, really hard for you to land the job that you want. Okay, well, if you enjoy this content, please do me a solid by liking the content. Just click the like or even subscribe. That would be awesome. Lets YouTube know that I'm doing a great job. Also, if you would like to get an interview, sign up at interview@.com. Yes, the calendar's full. I apologize. I only do so many of these for free a week, and people are now booking well over a month out. It tends to ebb and flow. I open up new slots because, well, quite frankly, I just like helping people. So that's pretty awesome.